It's time again for Q&A. Lots of people have sent in great questions this time. I'm Rosie Hardy, this is Rosie Hardy Gardening. Hello Rosie, what makes a plant invasive to native plants? Thank you. What tends to be classified as an invasive is usually something that is non-native, and they are taken from a country of origin, brought back and planted in a new country, which they find absolutely brilliant and the conditions just right for them to grow at full speed. So that is usually what is known by an invasive. Although you can have your own native plants that once you put them into a garden can then become invasive, because again the conditions in your garden are just so good for them to grow that they take off and take over, and those tend to be thugs. Can you let me know of large shrubs, trees happy to grow on chalky soils? Find that a lot of the online vendors, the plants I know are okay, don't seem to be on there, and I suspect that their searches are not quite accurate. So there are quite a lot of shrubs and trees that are perfectly happy on chalky soils, and I'm just going to give you three. That is Amelanchier, Exocorda and Osmanthus. All of those are fine on chalky soils. As to your other question about plant finder utilities, I think from that point of view, you've just got to go with the one that you find works best for you. The RHS plant finder is perfectly good for the UK. Now, for people who are in the UK, please remember this is the great time of year for you to be buying plants. Please look at the link below, and that goes to Hardy's nursery shop, and you will find all sorts of plants available for you to be able to mail order from us. Hello Rosie, I have a question pertaining to tulips. Why is it some gardens are complaining about tulip fire, whereas I know gardens where they're perfectly okay, they keep them flowering for 20 years? So tulip fire can occur at any time, but it does tend to be on the hybrid newer bred tulips more than the species tulips. So if somebody has got a meadow, for instance, and they've got Tulipa turkestanica or any of those small little species tulips, they tend to not get it quite so much. But this wet winter has been horrible for it, because tulip fire is a fungus, and fungus love these damp, mild conditions. So it may be a problem in a lot of places, and basically you have to remove. And also the other thing that you need to remember is a 4-year rotation helps with tulips. So leave ground bare from tulip planting after 4 years, and leave it for at least 2 years before you replant in there, and that way you won't have so much of a problem. A lot of people who do big tulip displays tend to use them as annuals, and they dig them up and replant. Also, planting really late in the year, so late in November, can help you stop getting tulip fire. I have a young crabapple, prairie fire, which is almost horizontal branches. Last year the top bit, the leader, snapped out. I want the tree to get at least a couple of feet taller. There seem to be some secondary branches going upwards from, say, the first and second levels. Can I use these to create the top growth? I would say yes. You should be able, because malice can be trained, you should be able to choose the strongest of those upward vertical growths and train that to now be the leader, and then cut other ones down so that the main one that you want becomes the dominant growth point. And that way you should be able to get it to grow back. Give it a couple of years. If it doesn't get to a shape that you're happy with, then perhaps think about training it in a different way, or think about replacing with a new tree. I had a couple of box balls against the wall of my house which had to be taken out. Some nice spring flower power, but I'm looking for mid to late summer plants and shrubs to replace what's there. So I would say, in a sort of shady spot like that and very dry, as you say, then a Butylon, Fats hedera and Liriope will all give you later flower power and will all survive in those sorts of conditions. I have a wisteria formed into a tree. planted in its pot. The pot has a few holes and it's gone into the ground. It's beautiful, started to flower last year. I'm worried because it's a metre away from the house and there are, let's see, there are pipes at 2 metres deep and about a half a metre away from it. What I would say with wisteria is that they do have a lot of root and their root will always search out water. So if you have got pipework lower down, I would just keep an eye out and make sure that you don't suddenly get a huge amount of burst of growth on your actual wisteria, because that could mean that it's finding water from another supply other than what you are doing with actually watering it from the top. Keep it well watered from the top, keep it well fed from the top, and hopefully it won't try and find all those tiny little holes that are in the bottom of that pot. But you do need a bit of drainage in there, otherwise the thing will get waterlogged. So you sort of got this crux 22 situation whereby you don't want it to spread out too much, but you also want to keep it going. So just keep an eye on it, and it might be advisable, if you can, to lift the pot once a year and trim off and root prune and then re-put back in the ground. I know that is quite a big effort, but it might be one way of doing it. Hi Rosie, I planted some muscari in pots 2 years ago. Lots of green leaves, no flowers. They're in the shade, that might be the problem. If I move them into a sunnier position, or should I start again? Maybe they will flower. So it's a difficult one because you've had them for 2 years, they've done nothing, and you really want them to be flowering. I would suggest that you do move them into a sunnier spot, but somewhere where you don't see them all the time, so therefore it's not so much of a problem. And I would start again as well, so that you do have some good new ones that are coming into flower. Choose some different types. There are lots of different muscari out there, and put those in a better location, and then just let the other ones see if they do anything. If they don't next year, then they're for the chop. My bulbs have started to come up, but some are not in a good spot. Is it too late to move them? It is best to wait until they are finished flowering to move them, but if they're really annoying you, then there is no reason why you can't move them while they are flowering and move them to a better situation. Just remember to dig up a huge big hole, do not disturb the roots of them too much, and put them where you actually want them. But I would recommend waiting till they have finished flowering. Hi Rosie. How is it that you can plant bulbs right next to other plants without root competition? This question comes up quite regularly, and basically what happens is that the bulbs are putting on their roots when other plants are dormant, so therefore they are not affecting the root growth on your other plants that are in the border, and that is why you don't get root competition. Once the bulbs have finished, they then lose their bulbs, and all of that material just goes to help create a good environment further down in the ground, which worms and other insects and microbes will then change into good organic matter within the soil. I've got 2 questions, if that's okay. Do various hydrangea require different pruning times and techniques, and which grasses need cutting back and when? So with this one, I'm actually only going to answer your first question, and I will keep the other question for another time. Hydrangea, yes, they do require different pruning techniques depending on the species that they are. So if you have climbing hydrangeas, for instance, and there are a few of those require pruning after they finish flowering, whereas all the other hydrangeas are better off pruned in winter to early spring. And you don't, some of them can go down low, some of them you just keep in a nice shape. Hi Rosie, can you advise me the best way to sow sea holly, Eryngium Big Blue? They're from last year's seed heads. Should I use peat-free compost or peat-free seed compost, and what is the best way to propagate them? Okay, so really with Eryngium, you should have sown them fresh. They are much, much better sown fresh. And yes, if you get yourself a peat-free seed and cutting compost, that is the best thing to do. Now you've kept them over winter, you will need to put them just onto the top of the trays, and then they need to go somewhere cold for a period. If you're lucky, some will germinate straight away, Others will take quite a bit of time. Because they are from the umbel family, they usually need to be done fresh. Hi Rosie, I have several Pittosporum bought last year in original pots. They've turned crispy. Not sure why, as these are replacement plants. Pittosporum in pots turning crispy, that sounds like it could be two things. One is they've got well overwatered because we've had a very wet, although you don't say where you are, so I can't assume that you're in the UK. But one is they've got overwatered. Two, if they go crispy, that usually means they've had frost and they've got really badly frosted. You may not have realised they've had frost, and therefore that's affected them. And the combination of frost and really wet containers just doesn't do for good living healthy plants, I'm afraid. Hello Rosie, I have a snowberry which has creeped from the copse behind my garden. How do I get rid of it? Right. Snowberry is really invasive, it'll run through and really is not an easy thing to get rid of. Digging up will help, just got to dig up, dig up, dig up. But also if you're happy to use a herbicide, then I would do so. And usually you need a herbicide for woody, shrubby plant material, and it's not spraying it on it, it is getting a paintbrush, cutting stems and painting it onto the cut stems, and that way you will reduce the growth and hopefully you will stop it from coming back into your yard. Thank you very much for watching, and please do subscribe to the channel.